What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Ticket with Tippett. Previously on this channel, we were doing all fantasy football. We were doing PPR, standard leagues, superflex, doing rankings, that kind of stuff. I want to move into a full Dynasty fantasy football channel. So all the content that you're going to see moving forward is going to be related to Dynasty fantasy football only. We won't be doing any redraft league, keeper league, anything like that. We might mention it here and there to kind of gain an understanding of how we can use value in dynasty versus standard PPR redraft and keeper leagues. But other than that, we're only talking about dynasty football. That's just what I've grown to love, and that's just what I want to do moving forward. What can we expect from this channel as far as dynasty fantasy football goes? You're going to see content like rookie mock drafts. We're going to be ranking rookie values. We're going to be talking about what things you should and shouldn't do in the off season and during the season when we get back into season, because on this day of recording is officially one day after the championship week of fantasy football, week 17. We're going to be able to go through and map out the whole year about dynasty fantasy football, and you're going to get the best content here at Ticket with Tippett. So today's video, obviously you clicked on it, you know what it is. It's 2025 winners and losers for Dynasty Championship teams. These are the guys that either pissed you off or made you real happy that you kept them or traded for them. Let's get through the list. We'll start off with winners and then we'll end it with losers. We're going to be real negative at the end of this video. Let's just get that out of the way. First winner at the wide receiver position, Jackson Smith and Jigba. If you spent a rookie pick on Jackson Smith and Jigba, it did not look promising for the first two seasons. DK Metcalf was still a big part of that offense, along with Tyler Lockett. But now that they're gone, JSN is the clear number one receiver in that offense. He is the best player in that offense. And he's the only one that they're looking to get the ball to in clutch situations. JSN finished the season as the wide receiver 2, only behind Puka Nacua, and in everybody's eyes, Puka Nacua is like the best fantasy football player that you can have. And JSN was a damn close second. So the value that JSN provides you now is almost untradeable. He finished as the number 7 overall ranking, and all these stats are provided by Fantasy Pros. I use their platform a lot for statistical fantasy purposes. So if you want to go check them out, feel free. I'm not sponsored by them. It's just a plug. So finishing with 20 plus fantasy points per game, and this is all PPR rankings as well. JSN dominated fantasy football this season. More than likely was a part of many championship teams. If you spent that investment on JSN or traded for him after his rookie season, your dividends are paid. There's nothing else that you're going to need from JSN. This season was almost enough to do it for you for whatever you bought him for or drafted him at value. And moving on to our number 2 wide receiver, we're going to do 2 per position for both winners and losers. So our number 2 winner for the wide receiver position is Chris Olave. And we could have gone a couple different ways, but I felt that Chris Olave was just, for the quarterback situation that's going on in New Orleans, he played about as good as any wide receiver could play in that kind of situation. Once Rashid Shaheed got traded, it was kind of gangbusters for him, and it was wide open for him to get all the targets other than Jawan Johnson was the other guy. And even Alvin Kamara got hurt during the season. So there was just a ton of target share for Chris Olave. So if you held on to him during the tough times, you're feeling great right now, because especially in the playoffs, he was excellent in the playoffs and getting you into the playoffs, like weeks 12 through 14. I want to say he was averaging like somewhere around 15 points, 16 points per game, which is really good, really solid. It's just like that benchmark player that okay, yeah, like he's in my lineup every single week and I don't have to worry about him. If you had Chris Olave, you felt great pretty much the entire second half of the season. Once Tyler Shuck got in there, that was it. It was wrapped. Spencer Rattler wasn't really doing it for him. And then Shuck got in there and it changed his season completely. And if you held on to him, you're feeling like a genius right now. Now let's move on to our winning running backs. James Cook is in his prime and he's about to peak, especially in this Buffalo offense. There's such a dynamic offense that scores so many points and gets in the red zone all the time. And not to take anything away from James Cook, he's phenomenal as well. He breaks so many tackles. If you watch his film and his game, it is unbelievable what he can do for that offense. And it's kind of crazy that they don't give him the ball more. And it's a shame that they don't have a true number 1 receiver to take some of the pressure off the run game, because if there was pressure off the run game, James Cook would be top 2, probably fantasy running backs. It'd probably be like McCaffrey, Taylor, and Cook. Probably be 1, 2, 3 in fantasy this season. But as far as dynasty goes, he holds the value probably over both of those guys because he's the youngest one out of all of them. And more than likely, he's going to be in the best offense moving forward because we don't know what's going to happen in San Francisco. We don't know what's happening in Indianapolis with Daniel Jones' situation. James Cook is in the most secure situation, if you want to put it that way, where his offense, Josh Allen's there for the long run. So their offense is always going to be somewhat good with Josh Allen at quarterback. So he's always going to have opportunities. So I would say his value right now is at the highest it's probably ever going to get. And you're not going to be able to trade for him. And that's why he's a winner in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Because if you do try and trade for him, the person who has him is getting so much in return for James Cook. And if they don't, then that's their mistake that they're making, and you jump all over that trade. Now let's move on to the number 2 running back that's a winner, and it's Javonte Williams. Everybody kind of expected Jaden Blue to come in and possibly take some of the passing work away from Javonte Williams. And that's kind of happened here later in the season with Malik Davis, but I think that was more related to injury. And it kind of sucks because recency bias, like the championship weeks and the playoff weeks, he was kind of hurt and didn't really play as much as he normally would or get as much volume as he normally would. So it didn't seem like his season ended up being as good as it did. But at the beginning of the season, if you had Javonte Williams, you know how good Javonte Williams was. There's no way you can't say that he was a most improved player, MVP caliber type player for your team throughout the 2025 season. And honestly, this fit in Dallas has been the perfect marriage. And if they don't re-sign him this offseason, I'd be very surprised. He's set to be a free agent right now, but I don't see how Jerry Jones does not try to bring him back. This offense is going to be good again next year, whether George Pickens and Javonte stay again. So if Javonte stays in Dallas and you're a dynasty owner of Javonte Williams, you got to be praying that he stays in Dallas because this is the perfect situation. Jaden Blue never took off. Malik Davis is just a third string running back that was just playing backup roles because Jaden Blue has been hurt. There's no competition. Javonte Williams seems like the guy that's going to be going forward with the Dallas Cowboys as long as he gets signed back there. If he doesn't, that's when things start to get questionable. Where does he sign? Where does he go? Is he going to have the same volume, workload, and style of play in the offense that he has in Dallas? Because if he does, you're feeling great about him in 2026 as well. Now, moving on to quarterback, Matthew Stafford. Now, you would say, Gavin, this is dynasty football, right? I don't care. If you were one of those guys that went out and traded for a veteran buy low in the offseason or right before the season, you feel like you just won the lottery with Matthew Stafford because this offense is so electric. They put up so many points per game, and the passing offense is so good under Sean McVay. You feel like $1 million just got thrown into your lap with Matthew Stafford. The addition of Devontae Adams has clearly been huge, and him missing these last 2 games of the season really sucked because I had Devontae Adams as a fantasy owner. I traded for him halfway through the season because I realized, like, hey, like, yeah, he's touchdown dependent a little bit, but they're going to keep scoring touchdowns. So I'm not worried about him not scoring touchdowns. Obviously, he got hurt, so that kind of derailed things. But for Matthew Stafford's sake, it seems like it doesn't matter who's in there, whether it's Jordan Whittington or it's Mumfield or it's Colby Parkinson. I mean, Tyler Higbee's been out for the season. It's incredible what a 37-year-old Matthew Stafford can do. So if you're in a super flex league, especially, this is for you guys. This is that MVP style play from Matthew Stafford that we kind of expected from him with the Rams all along. Some injuries have derailed a couple seasons here and there, but if you stuck through with him or traded for him in this past offseason, thumbs up for you, man. You got a snag right there. And he's probably coming back next year if he doesn't win a Super Bowl this year. So you might have a guy for the next year as well in 2026. And this next one is this one's a personal for me. This is personal because I do a Bench Bros podcast with my friend Jamarcus, and I told him that Liam Cohen was going to turn things around for Jacksonville. I saw him do it with Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, and Dave Canales was there first. And Dave Canales set the foundation for Baker getting better. But Baker's MVP type season that he had, like his best season of his career, was under Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen understands how to get these somewhat younger quarterbacks that kind of struggled early on in their career and help them understand what NFL football really is like and help them use their abilities to their max potential. When Doug Peterson was there, and surprisingly enough, Doug Peterson never had Trevor Lawrence use his legs. This is by far the best rushing season Trevor Lawrence has had, probably not just in NFL, but in his college career as well. This is his best rushing season by far, and the numbers show. He's quarterback 4 right behind Matthew Stafford, and Matthew Stafford is like a top 2 front runner for MVP. So it's him and Drake May. Like, Trevor Lawrence is that good in fantasy football. The addition of Jacoby Myers too, let's talk about that. That has put him over the ceiling. because before he was kind of struggling without Brian Thomas. They didn't really have any big playmakers. Brenton Strange was out. And then these guys like Jacoby Myers comes in. And then Brenton Strange comes back and Brian Thomas gets added back in. And all of a sudden, this offense is exploding left and right with points. They put up, what was it, 30 plus points against the Denver Broncos, who really haven't given up 30 points at all in any game this season. Trevor Lawrence just deserves to be a dynasty winner because going forward, as long as Liam Cohen is in Jacksonville, he is going to be set. And they just re signed Jacoby Myers to an extension, a 3-year extension. So that puts Jacoby Myers on the long term, somewhat long term, because that's Jacoby Myers pretty much end of his career. He's going to stay in Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is going to have his main target, the guy that he likes the most. Like we've seen that over the latter half of the season. And he's probably going to get, maybe not get Brian Thomas, but they're going to replace Brian Thomas with somebody that's good because they're not going to want to just not have another wide receiver to go along with Jacoby Myers. So if you're a Trevor Lawrence owner in Dynasty, you're loving it right now. The first winner of my Dynasty tight ends is Harold Fannin Jr. There was a lot of hype coming in about this guy from Bowling Green, this tight end. Everyone's like, he's a do-it-all tight end, but we just don't know if he can do it against NFL level talent because he was at Bowling Green. He never really played any big games. Harold Fannin was just like this, like almost like a mystery to a lot of people. Like people watch film and they're like, man, like he's like really good playing at Bowling Green. Can he do it against his top level talent? And we got that answer very fast because Kevin Stefanski has worked the offense to get Harold Fannin the football. It always seems like when they're in the red zone or they need a big play on third down, it's Harold Fannin that's getting the ball. He finished as tight end 5 this season, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's like top 5 tight end for a long time because of how many different ways he can be used in an offense, and because it's going to be hard to fill in 2 wide receivers that are going to be higher target share guys over Harold Fannin. And as long as they keep Shador, he is getting, like 8 targets a game with Shador at quarterback. So they keep Shador. If they draft a new quarterback, they're still probably going to love Harold Fannin. Like he's always open. He's always creating some style of play that is going to get him the ball and get him in space and let him be dynamic because for a tight end, he's pretty shifty and dynamic. Like corners have a hard time covering him because he's more like a receiver than he is an actual tight end. So we'll see what happens with the David Njoku stuff too. His contract extension hasn't been going well with Cleveland, so he's probably out of Cleveland. So if Njoku's the number 1 guy and they lean on the run game and they run play action and use Harold Fannin the way they've been using him this season, he's going to be like the number 1 receiving target on that team as long as they don't add like a Carnell Tate or a Jordan Tyson, which they might, but you never know. They might go quarterback. So if Harold Fannin is one of your fantasy players in Dynasty, you're feeling really good because you have a really, really good versatile young tight end for a long time in fantasy football. And number 1, I went through a couple guys, but ultimately it's Trey McBride. Like probably paid high price for him in the draft for a tight end, like all this hype around him. I mean, it's paying off. Like he is clearly the number 1 tight end. So just to put it into perspective, right here it says it. Trey McBride finished the season with 3.5 more points per game than the second place tight end, who was George Kittle. So McBride finished with 18.9 points per game, and Kittle finished with 15.4 points per game. That's 3 whole points a game difference in positional value. Of course, he's a winner for 2025, and he's going to be a winner for 2026 and 2027 and 2028 because I think he set the record straight. I think he's so much better than Brock Bowers. Now, granted, Brock Bowers hasn't had the greatest quarterback situation, but Trey McBride is still making it work. It doesn't matter who his quarterback is. It doesn't matter if it's Kyler Murray or Jacoby Brissett. It does not matter. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is for the Arizona Cardinals. Trey McBride is going to get his, and that's all that matters for dynasty owners. And now this is where we get a little sad because we're going to move into our losers now. 2 per position again, and starting at a wide receiver, you see it on the screen here. Brian Thomas Jr. How can we have the quarterback of this player be in the winner category and Brian Thomas be in the loser category? Because they never found a connection. Trevor Lawrence just made it happen with other guys like Jacoby Myers, Brenton Strange, Travis Etienne, Bajal Tootin at times. He made it and Parker Washington. Let's not forget Parker Washington either because that dude balled out at the end of the season. What happened to Brian Thomas? It is clear that there's some disconnect between him and the coaching staff and Trevor Lawrence. Like there's something going on that's it's football related, but it may not even be fully football related. It's something that happened that nobody's talking about, and that's a problem. And that's why it makes me believe, like I said earlier, that he might not be in Jacksonville for too long. Like people are going to try and trade for him while he's at his lowest. And same thing in Dynasty Fantasy Football. If you're a rebuilding team, this would be a really good time to trade for Brian Thomas Jr. because you're not going to get him for much lower than he is right now unless he absolutely tanks next season and like doesn't like take as many snaps as he normally would. So the fact that he's still in the field and he's still playing, and it just shows that he doesn't have that connection with Trevor Lawrence. So big loser. Like if you had him year one, you thought you had a stud, like locked and loaded, play him every single week. Doesn't matter who he plays. He could go up against Pat Surtain every week, and you feel confident that Brian Thomas is going to put up points. This year, not the case. Injuries lingered. I normally don't put injured players on this list, but he was bad before the injuries even came in 2025. So 10.1 points per game. I want to say it's like a 5 to 6 point drop off, maybe even 7 point drop off from where he was last season. I probably should check that, but in my head, that's about where he was last year. And he's wide receiver 44. Last year, he was wide receiver 4. That tells you everything you need to know about what happened to Brian Thomas Jr. He dropped 40 positional value spots. So just a terrible year for Brian Thomas Jr. Hopefully things get better next year. And hopefully Jacoby Myers honestly opens up, play for him to get some targets. We'll see what Brian Thomas Jr. has going into 2026. But if you're a fantasy owner of Brian Thomas Jr. and you're looking to start the rebuild, that's probably a good name to try and trade off. He's probably going to get you some decent value, but it's not going to be what he had in the first year. Let's just keep that 100%. And my dynasty number 2 wide receiver, that's a loser, Calvin Ridley. If anybody had this dude, they know how bad this dude was. Like I said, I don't like throwing injured players in, but in these two cases, these guys were not good from the start of the season. It did not matter that they got injured later in the season. They were like, that just put the cherry on top for these guys. Like Calvin Ridley was the worst wide receiver one in football. And I think anybody would tell you that if you ask, hey, who's the worst wide receiver one in football? It was Calvin Ridley. And some of that had to do with Cam Ward. Some of it wasn't even his own fault. Cam Ward couldn't hit the broads out of a barn to start his career. So everybody saw that. Everybody knew that they played tough defenses too. They played like Houston, Denver, and I can't remember who the third team, but they played 3 tough defenses to start the season, and it showed. Like Calvin Ridley was really struggling with Cam Ward at quarterback. So you have 6.8 fantasy points per game, and this is a guy who people were like, "Oh my gosh, go trade for Calvin Ridley before the Titans get Cam Ward because it's going to pay off because Cam Ward's so good that Calvin Ridley's going to get a ton of targets and they're going to throw the ball so much more than they did last year with Will Levis." Well, that didn't happen at all. Cam Ward was, like I said, not great at the beginning of the season, and Calvin Ridley did not benefit at all from having Cam Ward as his quarterback. Calvin Ridley, broken fibula, moving forward in Dynasty, you can't trade him. He's not even worth like a 4th round pick. He's 30 plus years old. He's coming off of a broken fibula. This is just not a good situation. He's going to be ready by next season start time, but is he going to be worth rostering? That's the big question. I think there's younger guys who you'd probably want to draft. And if you're a rebuilding team, have younger guys on your team that maybe eventually get a starting job based off of an injury and then never lose that job. Like, I don't think you want Calvin Ridley on your fantasy team moving into the future. So this is just one of those guys that I'm just way off of and keep him away from me as far as possible. And next, we'll talk about Caleb Johnson for our running back biggest loser. Caleb Johnson, this turned into an awful situation like that. It was so fast. It was off of a kick return. Now, granted, there was probably more stuff like preseason. He didn't look great. Let's just be completely honest. I think he broke like 1 touchdown off. He was not good. He kept on trying to break plays outside. He wouldn't find the holes correctly. Like he didn't have the vision for an NFL running back. And then on top of that, he pulls that play in the kickoff. It was just really bad. It was just a big mental bluff and mistake for Caleb Johnson. And Mike Tomlin basically like ripping into a player to start, like didn't rip into him, but just was like, "Hey, dude, you're done. Like it's Kenneth Gainwell and it's Jalen Warren, and that's all that there's going to be." After that, he played 1 game where he had over 21% of the snaps. That tells you everything you need to know. The Steelers don't see it in this guy. I don't see it in this guy. I don't think that he's ever going to find NFL value. I think he's probably the most droppable player on this entire list that I gave you for losers. Like Caleb Johnson's way younger than Calvin Ridley, and I'd almost rather drop Caleb Johnson rather than Calvin Ridley. That's how bad Caleb Johnson was in 2025. So overall rank of 505, you see it right there. Like running back rank of 105. There was 104 running backs better than Caleb Johnson this season. That is crazy. And for a guy who was like supposed to be decent at special teams and they just took him off special teams one play in, or not one play in, but like one bad play in, and that was it. That's all he had. Like they were done with him after that. That should tell you everything you need to know as a dynasty manager. Next running back is Chuba Hubbard, and it wasn't even Chuba Hubbard's fault. He's a loser this season, but it's not because of Chuba Hubbard. It's because of Rico Dowdle and how freaking good Rico Dowdle was. Granted, he played two of the worst defenses against the run that you could play. Believe it was the Jets and the Cowboys. So, I mean, like, who wouldn't, have a good game against them? But it was the fact that he had like 200 scrimmage yards each game. Chuba probably never would have done that against those teams. He probably would have had a good game, but Rico tore these teams apart. And the fact that Dave Canales actually had the guts to sit Chuba Hubbard, which was a guy that they just extended in the previous season, and just have Rico Dowdle be the guy, that took some balls. So shout out to Dave Canales because he picked the right guy, like Rico Dowdle over Chuba Hubbard. He didn't want to do it right away because he wanted to see if Chuba Hubbard could bounce back and, gain that edge that he had back. But it was Rico. Like it was, Drake. It was time to hit him with the Rico. Like there's nothing you could do when you have somebody like Rico Dowdle going off in your lineup and in real life and running back, and he's a better pass protector, like almost just as good as Chuba Hubbard in the receiving game. Like it's hard to play Chuba over him. I don't care what money you're spending on Chuba. Like at that point, you're just playing Rico because he's the hot hand. Like it was unfortunate for 2025. I don't expect them to keep Rico. As good as he played, Chuba Hubbard has a good contract and a good size contract for a running back of his caliber. I don't expect them to keep Rico, so I think that opens things up for Chuba Hubbard next season. So he's just a loser for this season. He's like the only one that I'm like, okay, in the future, he's probably going to have better seasons. Like that's just going to happen because it's Chuba Hubbard and he's a good player. Like the one injury this year just kind of derailed his season because Rico played so good after that. So we'll see what happens. But if Rico does come back, dynasty owners, y'all are on your own. Take care of what you got to do. And moving on to quarterback, anybody who owns JJ McCarthy in Dynasty, they want to get rid of him. I can tell you that right now. They might be like, oh no, like Kevin O'Connell, like trust the process, like Joel Embiid type trust the process stuff with JJ McCarthy. They want to get rid of him worse than you would even know. Like this guy was not good. Like the 14.4 points, so much of that came from like garbage time touchdowns that he would score. Like he would score a rushing touchdown with like 2.5 minutes left when the defenses were playing bad against Minnesota. Like they're playing soft defense and he would just run one in. Like so many of his fantasy points came from that. And the fact that he has like one of the best receiving duos in the NFL. So the fact that he couldn't score more points with that offense and Kevin O'Connell, like Kevin O'Connell's been proven to like be quarterback proof. So you got to feel some kind of bad about JJ McCarthy because if they ever move on from him, I don't know if there's another coach that could pick him up and do better than what Kevin O'Connell's done with him. But you really, really don't feel good about JJ McCarthy moving forward, especially with the injury history too. So, I mean, you just don't feel great about JJ going into 2026 and future seasons after that. And next we have the guy, the man of the hour, really. Like this is this is the guy who has a huge contract in Miami. They God bless them. They have a really hard. I mean, it's not even a hard decision, but like it's just a hard hole to come out of when you have a guy who was owed 54 million. Going into next season. Tua Tagovailoa, 54 mil. They owe him guaranteed money in 2026, and they benched him for the rest of the season. Quinn Ewers came in, didn't play great the first game, but he came in this next game, the second game in week 17, and he looked pretty damn good. Like he looked like he was playing just as well as Tua, and he's on a much cheaper contract. So the Dolphins are probably like, oh, cool, like we can have a quarterback that plays just as good as Tua. There's less interceptions really because Quinn Ewers didn't throw too many interceptions, for a seventh round pick. Like, I mean, let's not act like, Quinn Ewers was a first round pick like Tua was. So I think injuries really derailed his career and it's kind of, his hip is a big problem. Like his throwing motion, my brother's a Dolphins fan. We talk about this. His throwing motion just is not the same. After he got that hip surgery, it is just killed his throwing motion and it has killed his deep ball accuracy. He still has one of the best deep balls in the NFL, but he just like sometimes can't get enough on it, especially on the run. Like he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL on the run. So you have to keep him because at the end of the day, he still has that potential to be one of those guys. Like 2023 was great proof of what he could be. So if he falls into the right situation, you're feeling great. But in 2025, man, he just seems like probably the biggest loser at quarterback that you can think of that's not an older quarterback. So like a Geno Smith. Like Geno Smith, we knew was coming near the end of his career, like wouldn't be worth anything in Dynasty. Like Tua, you were kind of hoping that like, okay, everybody's healthy again. Tua's healthy, start the season fresh. And it just never panned out. 12.6 points per game, quarterback 25. I mean, you just don't feel good moving forward. And as we have one Browns tight end in the winner category, we have one in the loser category, and that is David Njoku. Obviously, David Njoku, every year it feels like this guy just does not live up to the hype of what people are projecting him to do in fantasy. And I feel like he is consistently one of the most overhyped players because of his frame and his athletic ability. So I'm not saying David Njoku is a bad football player because he's a damn good run blocker. Like he can dominate on the line. So he's valuable in that sense, but for fantasy, he's just a red zone target. Like he's not that guy. That's Harold Fannin now. David Njoku's the biggest loser. We really don't know where he's going. I mean, if he ended up in a spot like Washington, that would be best case scenario because like Washington has nobody. David Njoku could fit in well there, but if you're a fantasy owner of David Njoku, you got to be worried and really praying that free agency goes the right way for this guy because if not, it's I mean he's almost at his age 30 season. It's getting close to time for David Njoku to be kind of not worth anything in Dynasty. So not feeling good about him moving forward at all. And the last guy, same situation, always Evan Ingram, always disappoint. He had one season where he didn't disappoint, and it wasn't even that great of a season. Like for this guy being that highly recruited as a tight end, as a receiving tight end, like he's not known at all for his for his run blocking or pass blocking. This guy is literally like a receiver, and somehow he doesn't receive. I don't understand it. Every single year, it's like, oh, this is the year they lost this guy at wide receiver, or like, oh, gonna run the ball as much, so like this guy's gonna get a ton of targets. No, Evan Ingram every year, no matter which situation he's in, has never really found a way to get it done. And fantasy owners and dynasty owners, just in fantasy, just in general, people have to stop giving this dude a chance. Like 6.4 points per game. That's tight end 28 and overall 214. Like for a guy who's arguably the number 2 target in his offense at the start of the season, went to Sean Payton's offense. People were losing their minds over Evan Ingram, saying, oh my gosh, Evan Ingram is going to have like a top 5 tight end season. Not even close. Not even close. Like this dude is buns. Like he does not have it to be that kind of tight end. So if you have him in Dynasty, you lost all value this season because this is by far the best situation he's ever been in. He doesn't have it. He's older. He's getting out of his prime. It's over for Evan Ingram. Adam Troutman was scoring more points at one point per game than Evan Ingram. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it right there. That's 2025 winners and losers. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you subscribe, follow, like, and share. All that stuff really helps the content and the channel grow. So, like I said, moving forward, dynasty football content, that dynasty fantasy football, that's what I want to do going into the future. All my content is going to be wrapped around that topic. So, let's just get this channel growing, get it moving, and get shared to your friends because I mean, this advice, this winners and losers, this is going to tell you like who's pretty much untradeable and if you have these guys, you know the pain that you went through having some of these losers and you know the joy that you had having some of these winners if you won championships this year with some of these guys like and you got to feel good with the winners moving forward too like next year oh my gosh like I have a chance to win the championship like again like kind of thing. So yeah, other than that, man, take it easy, y'all be safe. I won my dynasty championship this year. I hope y'all did too, and it was because some of the winners that were on the screen there, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.